Welcome to the Diet Fiction Podcast, the show that tells you the truth about diet, nutrition, and health to educate, motivate, and inspire you to live a healthier, more fulfilling life. And here is your host, Michał Sawierski.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Diet Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Michał Sawierski. I'm a documentary filmmaker, author, and wellness advocate. And in this show, we expose several misconceptions and myths about diet, health, and nutrition. Join me every week as I interview some of the most forward-thinking and disruptive health experts on the planet to help educate, motivate, and inspire you to live a healthier and more fulfilling life. Hey everyone, welcome to the Diet Fiction Podcast. I'm really excited you're joining us today. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Michał Sawierski, and a lot of people have trouble pronouncing my name. And the best way to explain it is that it sounds like the words me and how together. So me plus how equals Michał, and that's me. I won't even get into the details about my last name. For now, let's leave that for another episode. It's just one of those tongue twisters, really complicated Polish names. But anyway, I'm super excited that you guys are joining me on the podcast today because the story we're about to share can potentially change your life, or at least your outlook on life, for the better, of course. If you watched my previous documentary, Food Choices, available on Amazon Prime, by the way, and many other platforms, you might remember D. Anthony Evans, an incredible athlete that overcame one of the deadliest forms of cancer on the planet. After given a 6 months of life prognosis, D. Anthony decided to change his life and decided that he was not going to give up. Well, it's been almost 7 years now, and D. Anthony is not only alive and kicking, but he is thriving more than ever. I mean, if you watch some of his fitness stunts and videos on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, I mean, I don't know how he does it. And even if you don't know who he is and what he went through, your jaw will drop. I mean, this guy does some crazy athletic stunts, but once you become familiar with his story, then his feats just seem out of this world, seriously. I mean, he had undergone dozens of surgeries over the years and removed hundreds of tumors from his body. D. Anthony calls himself a cancer thriver, and he will talk you through his amazing journey on this episode. As you listen up, you'll also hear the name of Chef Dave Choi come up in the conversation quite often. Chef Dave is D. Anthony's mentor who played an instrumental role in his journey to health, and I had the pleasure of meeting Chef Dave and am honored to call him a friend. He is almost considered a sort of urban legend in Chicago, where he resides. He is this wise, humble Korean Buddhist monk and vegan chef and martial arts guru, however you want to call it, who has helped hundreds, if not thousands of people heal through his words of wisdom and his amazing healing foods, which are all whole food plant-based. So we'll have Chef Dave join us in an upcoming episode because after listening today, I'm sure you will be eager to find out more about his story. So just a few announcements, guys, before we get started. We just recently launched a companion book for our film Diet Fiction. It is also called Diet Fiction, and it is available on Amazon. I co-wrote this book with Dr. Pam Popper, who's a PhD in nutrition, a world-renowned PhD in nutrition and health. And if you enjoyed Diet Fiction, the documentary, then you might also like this book because we get into a lot more details on the topics covered in the film. So check it out on Amazon or click on the link on the show notes at dietfictionpodcast.com. Just a quick update on Diet Fiction, the film. The documentary continues to share the top ranks on iTunes, guys, and I'm really grateful for all the support. We're on the top in USA and Canada, and if you haven't seen it yet, you can watch it on, of course, iTunes, Amazon, Vimeo, Google Play, Vudu, and dozens of other digital platforms, and we're adding new platforms all the time. And you can also buy DVDs and Blu-rays on Amazon.com. If you watch it, please let us know what you think. You can join our community on Facebook, on facebook.com/dietfictionmovie, or on Instagram @dietfiction. And guys, if you haven't watched my previous movie, Food Choices, that is the precursor to Diet Fiction. It is available for free on Amazon Prime for anyone that has a subscription, and many other platforms as well. So check it out. Well, today's guest, D. Anthony Evans, is featured in it as well in Food Choices. So if you guys want a refresher, kind of after you listen today, you want to find out more, you can watch Food Choices and you will see D. Anthony featured in that film. I hope you guys find this episode as inspiring and powerful and motivating as I do. So without further ado, let's get started. D. Anthony, how are you, brother? Thank you so much for joining me on the Diet Fiction podcast today.
I am doing absolutely amazing, Mihal. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great day to be alive.
It's so great to catch up with you. We haven't talked probably in about a year. I mean, we exchanged text messages and we've sort of been in touch through social media. But since I moved out from Chicago, we haven't really had the time to catch up. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to record the podcast and also catch up with you a little bit. So this is awesome, man.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely amazing, brother. Absolutely amazing. And it has been like a year and some change since we've seen each other physically. But I just want, first of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be in Food Choices, because since that debuted, life has just taken on a whole different meaning as far as the exposure the film has got and what that has exposed me to. And it's just, several people in several different countries that recognize, identify with me, the movie, and to hear somebody walk up to you and say, hey, you're the guy from the movie. You're the reason I went vegan or plant-based. That right there, that's priceless. From Morocco, from Marrakesh to Nice, France to London. I mean, the movie has Germany. I haven't been anywhere where somebody didn't know the movie and identify with me, you, or the whole movement. So I'm just excited and in awe still. Now you shot me for that. I think it was 2014 or 15, bro. That was a lot.
That was
and
a while ago.
People don't even understand. Right. Yeah, they don't understand. Like, that was a while ago, and that just shows the power of the information, because the movie was what you shot, as far as I'm concerned, was shot in a different spot, a different part of my journey, rather. Like, I'm not even that guy anymore. I've evolved even more, but it's amazing, to look back at the movie and just see where I was there and what I could do, and then where I'm at right now and what it took in that transition. So again, just want to thank you, brother, for the opportunity. And it's good to talk to you and be with you this afternoon.
Thanks, D. And, I'm also really grateful for you participating in the film and allowing me the opportunity to interview you, because your story, I mean, it's so amazing and so inspiring. And I think it has touched a lot of people all around the world, and just given people hope and energy and motivation to keep going and to overcome any difficulties that they might be facing. Like I said, I'm also really grateful for you participating in it. And today I wanted to take the opportunity to sort of, catch up with you, and also to all the listeners that have seen Food Choices. And, there's a lot of people curious to see how you're doing. It's been, almost three years since we released Food Choices. And actually, since our interview, it's been 4 years. And,
it's been 4 years.
Yeah. So before we get into, where you're at right now, just for those listeners that might not be familiar with your story, can you just tell us a summary of, who you are, your journey, and where you're at right now?
Absolutely. So my name is D. Anthony Evans. I'm I consider myself an 11-time cancer survivor, in the sense that I've had 11 operations. 7 of them were 9 hours. I've had 385 tumors removed from my body. Was diagnosed with MPNST, malignant peripheral neurological sheath tumor, in January 2012. That is a very aggressive, high-grade sarcoma bone cancer. And they removed a 2-pound, 7-centimeter tumor off my spine and a 7-inch plexiform tumor that was in between my scalp and my skull. But the irony and the importance of who I am and why this movie, needed to project who I am in my story is the fact that I was given 6 months to live in January 2012. Told to say goodbye to my family, get my affairs in order, because nobody in history had lived past 6 years. They say 6 years to 0 is post-operation life expectancy. 0 meaning it was 2 pounds, 7 centimeters, and 6 years meaning it was atypia or early diagnosed. And mine was 2 pounds. So it was kind of sudden death. And I dejected that deposit, if you will, in the sense that I kind of told my doctor that unless he talked to God or, it was going to kill me, I didn't know how to give up on my life 6 months before the date. And my mother, I watched my mother. I'm an AIDS orphan, and I lost my mother the second week of my junior year in high school. But I watched her while she had her death sentence, just as I did. She was in front of my high school every morning with the megaphone, condoms, and HIV prevention literature, trying to save my entire generation. On top of that, she was part of Beehive, part of the founding board, and that's an acronym for Better Education Against HIV, which is started in Illinois, and now they have chapters throughout the world. But I was born to an activist, and I just knew that I had to fight. I got introduced to Master Vegan Chef David Choi after my 7th operation in 9 months. I had 7 back-to-back 9-hour operations from January to November 2012. They allowed me December to recuperate, and we were supposed to go right back into surgery the first week of January in 2013. Long story short, Dave explained to me just, he's a monk. So it's not in the doctor terms with the fancy acronyms. When he explains cancer and what you're fighting, he explains it like a 3-year-old. And that's how he told me to explain it when I'm explaining to people so everybody understands. And he made it real simple. Everybody has cancer cells in their bodies, but they congregate in certain people's bodies for certain reasons. But the common denominator in every single cancer patient's journey or body is the acidic pH level of their blood and just internal biome and bacterial environment. He said, you shouldn't be trying to kill the cancer, D, because cancer is not an external invasion. Okay. No cancer came from outside in the world and jumped in your body. Okay. The cancer cells were always there, but they congregated into a tumor for a reason. What I'm going to teach you how to do is simply starve them. He said, you're 315 pounds. Your visceral fat is out of control, and that's what's fueling your tumor situation. If we can get your visceral fat out of your body and reverse your state to more alkalinic, we won't kill the cancer, but you'll be able to live a prosperous, fruitful life together with the cancer. And did I think he was crazy? Probably. But again, the $13 billion facility sent me home to die. And the Korean monk that was smiling, that was like, he wasn't worried at all. He was like, if you listen to me, I can help you. And all I know is January 4th of this year, I celebrated my 7th year on the planet, 42 years old, best shape of my life. And I do 200 pull-ups every day. And I owe it all to my positive mindset, my nutrition, and my fitness firing all at the same time. It's an extremely disciplined life, but it's a lot better than being in that dirt, and it's less painful than doing chemo. So that's my little story. I hope that brings everybody up to date. And the energy you hear in my voice is because I understand that so many people didn't wake up this morning. So many people that went to bed last night had no idea that last night would be just that, their last night. I know how precious these breaths are that I'm taking, inhaling this life, exhaling this negative energy, CO2. I understand. And I just appreciate you, Miha. I know I got worked up, but this lifestyle has given me a second shot at life. I feel like I'm only 7 years old. I can't say that enough times. I'm only 7 years old. And when you're sick and you can bring your mindset back to a younger space, you know, you've kind of, you know, done yourself a great service in the sense that you've kind of handled the mental part of it. Now you just got to work on the nutrition and the fitness component, and you have a manageable, tangible, functioning life plan. That's how I look at it. Like, I cannot stop doing what I'm doing, not for a day, in my mind, because it's what has yielded all this success that I'm seeing. So again, D. Anthony Evans, cancer thriver, strength, elite activist and athlete, just happy to be alive and happy to propagate this message.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing and for bringing us up to speed a little bit. I just wanted to unwrap the story a little bit, dig a little deeper, and because there's so many fascinating components of it. Yes. Well, let's starting maybe with Chef Dave, who, you know, a lot of our listeners might not be familiar with. He's actually featured in Food Choices towards the very end of the film, where he talks about the animals. So if you guys go back and watch it on Amazon Prime or any other platform, you'll see it. But Chef Dave is quite a unique person, and actually we met. D. Anthony and we met through Chef Dave and his friend Gloria. So Chef Dave is this, you know, amazing person. He's a Buddhist Korean chef and monk who makes this amazing plant-based food, this healing food. It's just not just, you know, any kind of food. It's kind of hard to define and explain Chef Dave if you don't know him. It's a very complex human being, but it's hard to put into words. But essentially, he is someone that makes this amazing food, and he was a very successful restaurateur for many years, had many restaurants. Now he's basically retired, but he's still helping people that he doesn't advertise his services or anything. He just helps people that sort of cross his path, and he helps them with his healing food and food recommendations. And I mean, I don't know if we can get too much into detail here, but essentially the stories like D. Anthony's stories and many others that were lucky enough to meet Chef Dave through their healing journey. You know, we hear some amazing stories of recovery, and, you know, essentially he is telling people to eat low-fat, whole plant-based foods, but there's a little more into it that goes. You know, there's his coaching, and I don't know if you can call it coaching. Is him sharing his wisdom with
it's people. Like his guidance.
His guidance that is huge, you know. And I've seen people basically come back from the dead, you know, just from following him for a few years, and knowing the people close to him is just amazing what he has done. But the core of his message is what we talk about in this podcast and in the films and in the books, is, you know, trying to eat as much as you can of whole, low-fat, whole plant-based foods, you know, and that is sort of like the core, and then the other part is the mental aspect as well, and all the other things. But so I just kind of wanted to unwrap that a little bit for those that, you know, are not familiar with Chef Dave, and also was wondering if you could share a little bit more about, you know, the food that you eat, that Chef Dave provides to you to this day, right?
Yeah, to this day. I want to also touch on I want to touch more on that visceral fat, because I know you're going to get a lot of emails. So let me just get on the record. Sure. So we all unless you've chewed your food 20 to 30 times since you began eating, we're all being very naive to think that it moved through 30 feet of gastrointestinal tract that's compressed into 6 inches. That's physically impossible. I think all adults can agree that clumpy things, even with liquid, don't move completely through your entire intestine as it should. Just because we're in a rush and nobody, really chews more than 3 or 4 times before they swallow. And Dave teaches that when you have adopted that bad behavior and you do that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're essentially collecting a percentage of every meal, okay, and storing that. And then you do that, for a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, 2, 3, 4 years. And before you know it, you have an old collection of meat, dairy, yeast, and sugar that is lining in your organs. It's the reason we start getting wide around our waist. It's simply undigested food. And what he teaches is the only way to remove visceral fat is not, you can't sit up your way out of it. You can't treadmill your way out of it. You can't walk your way out of it. You cannot exercise your way out of visceral fat. The only way to remove visceral fat is by not depositing the same things that got it there in the first place, which you hear people talking about intermittent fasting and things like that. He's before that, in the sense that there's no fasting because it's a lifestyle change. Okay, you'll never go back. If you made this decision, you'll go back to that old behavior. So I can't say fasting. You simply gave up the meat, dairy, yeast, and sugar and replaced it with plant-based substitutes. And depending on how big you are, at about 4 to 6 weeks, just as if we were starving on the side of a mountain because we got lost or an avalanche or whatever, and we began to go into starvation mode, the body would naturally go find all the fat in our body. I don't care where it's at. It's going to go clean you out. And then it's going to move on to your muscle, and then you die. That's how starvation works. That's a very painful version of it. We do the same thing, except instead of starving or fasting, you're simply replacing those negative acidic foods with positive alkalinic foods. And slowly but surely, you'll see your body transition. I was 315 pounds. I watched 115 pounds slide off my body, and I was powerlifting for 17 years and could never get my abs to show ever. That's how I know this works. So when we talk about removing the visceral fat, it's letting your body kind of go into ketosis and eat the garbage itself, which brings you cellularly to a new, younger you. So I just wanted to clear that up, Mihal, because people get confused when I say that. And unless I break it, then they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. This is all, you can Google all of this. You can fact check this. This is all fact. This is not Dave's opinion. This is, and actually the show that's big in pop culture, I think it's called Naked and Afraid. They drop you in the wilderness and you have to find your food supply. And that show kind of breaks down what you look like when you started the show chubby. And if you haven't found your food supply, these people, some of them look like skeletons. And it's literally what happens in the process. They're just like starving to death. But that if you're listening and you want to kind of see in real time what I'm talking about, watch a couple episodes of Naked and Afraid. It's a survivalist show where they drop people in the middle of nowhere for 21 days and they have to survive with no clothes. And it's the best way I can show you how the process works in the body when it doesn't have food. It survives off the fat that's stored in its cells. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, Meow.
Yeah, no, that's I'm glad you brought that up. I think this notion of visceral fat is very sort of overlooked, and people don't talk about it that much. We talk a lot about weight loss and looking better, being in shape and all that. But what really matters, like you said, is not the fat around our belly and our legs and butts, and the fat around our organs that is what causes trouble.
Heart. Yeah, bro, like our heart and it's everywhere. If you could flip yourself inside out, everybody would change because they'd be like, no, and you'd be like, yeah, this is how you look. Yeah. And nobody's different. Like we all were given the same information basically growing up. But my point is, it's never too late to change. That's all.
Absolutely, and sometimes external sort of body fat is not necessarily a sign of internal body fat. I mean, people metabolize, have different metabolisms, and each person is different. You can have a person that's overweight that's metabolically healthy, and you can have someone also that looks lean and mean and has a lot of organ fat around their livers, their heart, and could look good on the outside but have really bad health on the inside. So each one of us, it's different, but I think the best way to sort of prevent that from happening and not play the health lottery, so to speak, is to plant-based diet.
The health lottery. There you go. Yes.
So going back to Chef Dave, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people like really curious of like what kind of foods was he providing you with, and what were you eating on a day-to-day that allow you to get your health back on track and to be in a great shape that you are in today?
Excellent question, Mihal. So what Dave basically does is he volume cooks on a Saturday and a Sunday for his patients, and the meals are basically 21 plant-based meals is what it breaks down to. There's a soup every day, there's an entree every day, and then there's a container of pine nut stew. So let me start with the pine nut stew, because really
the famous pine nut stew.
The famous pine nut stew. I'm just going to start with that because I just have to be perfectly honest. My life has been reduced to boiled nuts. Like this is, hey, and I'm okay with it. Because before this, let me just give you a little background. It was 10,000 calories a day, 40 pounds of chicken breast a month, whey and casein shakes 3, 4, 5 times a day for 17 years, for more than half of my life. And that was what I was taught. That was the information I was using. And ultimately, it was that behavior and information that made me sick. When Dave came into my life, he was like, when I start feeding you and when you detox your body, your food is going to be fuel rather than food. So you need to change your mind in the sense that you're not eating for your selfish tongue anymore. You're eating for this body, okay? Because you've been given a second chance. And when he said that, I didn't understand that he was propping me up because this stuff was going to taste like dirt for the first 4 to 6 weeks. But I didn't understand. He was telling me all of this sacred stuff because the first time I ate the stew, Mihal, I couldn't get it down my throat. But when he explained that 1 cup of pine nuts is 900 calories and 18 grams of protein, I understand that type of math. I said, what? And then I did my research, and sure enough, 1 cup of pine nuts is 900 calories and 18 grams of protein. To an athlete, that's the type of stuff that gets your attention. So then I said, so how many cups are in? He said, we not even do cups. That's 3.5, 4 pounds every time. Calorically, that's equivalent to 14, 15 filet mignons without the stroke, heart disease, heart attack, and cancer that comes with eating 14 filet mignons every day. I said, but I thought the body could only process a certain amount of protein in a certain amount of time. He said it can, but when they make those statements, they're kind of leaving out that they're talking about meat, okay, protein. Flesh protein and animal protein flesh protein and plant protein don't metabolize the same way. They're not even on the same level. Animal protein burns like a candle. It's literally like in slow motion in your body, while its plant equivalent burns like a firecracker. You're always going to be hungry. You're always going to burn it up if you stay moving. And your physique and your weight and everything is going to be based solely on your calorie burn intake. Now, that was a lot to hear from him. But the first year, I kind of burnt myself into Carl Lewis. Like I had shriveled up because I was going too hard. And it was a median figuring out my training regimen and then adding potatoes to what he gave me to get the physique and the power and the endurance that I was looking for. But my days are broken down to 4 pounds of pine nuts that I break up throughout the day. And then I have an entree that he does, pizza, macaroni and cheese. All of this stuff is plant-based, but visually and aesthetically, it looks like you're at a 5-star restaurant. And that's part of Dave's genius, because this program was actually designed for pediatric cancer patients on Chicago's north, west, and south side that live in the worst neighborhoods, that often when they go through chemotherapy, they develop neutropenia. And that's the body's lack of ability to produce white blood cells. And if you've ever heard Dave speak, you always know everything comes back to white blood cells and the immune system. And that the only way to replenish white blood cells is through earth-grounded food. But when you're dealing with kids in poverty who have never been subjected to healthy food, just as it tasted like dirt to me, it naturally tastes like dirt to them. Their grocery store is the gas station or the convenience store. Canned goods and add water and stir products is what their body is used to. But when you've gone through chemo and you have a compromised immune system, that's nutritionless food. And what Dave figured out is the only way I'm going to get these kids to eat this food, if I make it aesthetically pleasing, make it look like something relative to them, and then I use my magic, season it, and getting it as close as possible. And Mihal, you have to be a genius to even think about that. Like, I got to get these people this medicine. How am I going to trick it into them? Like, it's just genius. It's genius, bro. But I don't even count that stuff. That stuff to me, because it doesn't fill me up. It's more or less, to me, it's a distraction that I don't have to eat nuts, or that I do have to eat nuts. To me, it's just a distraction. But my life is about pine nuts, brother. I'm just going to be perfectly honest, because of my high intense training lifestyle. I train 3 to 4 hours still. And so it requires me to live a little more strict than everybody else, in the sense of food. And then I'm just snacking in between everything else, quinoa bowls and things like that, because I'm not going to lie, I'm always hungry, but I'm always healthy too. So.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, no, I think I had the pleasure of tasting Chef Dave's food on many occasions, and it really is incredible. And just to set the record straight for some people that might be, when you mentioned pizza and lasagna and things like that, we're not talking fake vegan cheese or Beyond Burgers, right, or anything like that. No. It's like the healthiest, leanest, cleanest organic food you can imagine. So it's not
from scratch.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention this. Dave didn't just fall out the sky. Dave was in the restaurant business for 40 years. He founded the first quote unquote vegan restaurant. There was no vegans 40 years ago. It was simply the Buddhist restaurant that all the affluent people in Chicago, including Oprah, Phil Jackson, the Bulls, ate at his restaurant. He's the reason Luke Longley, who was our center, came from Toronto in the 90s. He was extremely overweight. Mentored by Dave for a summer, came back with an 8-pack like me. And so this dude has been doing this for years on several levels and retired kind of when I got sick. But I haven't seen him retire yet. To be honest with you, Mihal, have you seen him sit down at all?
I have not, to be honest with you.
Man, to be retired for 7 years and you're still moving like you were when I met you. It just speaks volumes to his character. And it's an honor that he's passed kind of the torch to me as far as, speaking and telling the man everything that he's taught me. The man would come to my house every Sunday and drop off 21 plant-based meals and give me 2 hours of lessons that come from a 3,000-year-old Buddhist medicinal handbook. And just he didn't think I was listening to him because it was a lot, but I listened and I absorbed everything. What he taught me, they don't teach in school. And that's why I hold it so dear to my heart, Mihal, because what he's given me, and this is what he told me, he said, D, you're different in the sense that you're going to go further than I went, in the sense that I've seen you do what I've done with people without the food. And that struck me. I never looked at it. He said, you got kids across the country who didn't have access to the food, but they believed in the message and they followed the guidance and the discipline. He said, that's the power you got in your words. And that's why you have to continue this on. You have to continue building networks, because he said, I don't know what's going on, but somehow the universe is providing, opportunities to get this message out. You got to just go, D. And I just, that's just those are big shoes, man. Those are some huge shoes. But he's given me a second shot, and I could have, been my pride and ego meathead powerlifter self and told him he was crazy. But I knew, Mihal, if I didn't take Dave's help, I was going to be dead. I knew it. I knew my doctors didn't have the answers. I just knew it. It was the doctors or Dave. And I didn't do the lottery, but I rolled the dice with him, baby. And it absolutely worked.
That's awesome, and I really wish more people around the world would have access to the kind of information that you got from him. It's we're trying to spread a lot, parts of it through the plant-based movement, but there's more to it. And one of the aspects that we you learn, and I also attended some of Chef Dave's meditation workshops, and one of the things that he talks about and that you are so good at implementing in your own life, it's the power of our own mindset, of our power of our minds when it comes to overcoming difficulties and healing from disease. Can you talk about the importance of that in your own journey?
Absolutely. So I was angry, bro. Man, my entire life, it feels like. I'm sorry. Since my mother died, and she was kind of my mother and my father. And, junior year, I was just lost, man. I felt like I was trapped on this planet with this tumor disease that I didn't tell nobody that I knew I was sick, but my mom and maybe my aunts and my grandmother. Other than that, it was my secret. And I'm left here with no mom, no dad, and a disease that my doctor told me was going to make me blind by 18. Like, that was supposed to be happening before the cancer. I was supposed to be blind. And so I'm dealing with all of this as a 16-year-old, and it just turned me into an angry, bitter person internally. Like, nobody knew it. I was still a good guy, you know what I'm saying? But I hated myself. I hated to look at myself in the mirror. I hated to think about I hated me, bro. And I tried to kill myself. I just hated it. I hated being here stuck without her. And and I didn't have the support because I didn't accept the support. It's nobody's fault but mine. But as a pride-filled young man at 16, you think you're grown, and crying isn't cool and feelings aren't cool. And I didn't do any of that. I pretended like I was okay. And it turned me into a hardened, excuse my French, asshole, if you will, bro. And I know that decisions and choices in my life, you know, something didn't allow me to get killed, or it could have just went worse, because I had to get to where I was at when I met Dave. Because the first thing he told me, bro, was, D, the first thing you have to do if I'm going to work with you, I need you to love your disease and your cancer. So let me say that again. The man looked me in the face. I need you to love your cancer, your situation, and your disease. It enraged me. Like it was the button in my life. And he's telling me, nah, wrap your arms around that. And I start crying. I got real emotional. And he's like, listen, D, you're spiritual. You believe in a creator, right? You talk all this creator, positive energy, the universe. You believe that, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, does your creator make mistakes? I said, no. My creator is perfect, flawless. He said, well, isn't it a little disrespectful that you're saying you hate something that your creator, that you revere, gave you? I thought about it. And he went on to say, what if the creator took your mother from you at 16, thwarted your basketball career, made you have 11 9-hour operations and 385 tumors removed from your body, dodge a 6-month death sentence, only because he knew you were the one that could stand that, and then go tell the world how you did it? Who else wouldn't have quit after surgery too? And I was like, wow. And then he's changing my perception of my circumstances. And in that moment, I'm sitting here fascinated. I was just about to start crying, and I'm feeling myself pump up with power. He's saying he put you through things that you can't make up in a movie, D. If you write down what you've been through on paper and don't have proof, people won't believe this stuff. But somehow your creator knew that you were the one that could bear all of this stuff, still get up every morning glowing, shining, doing 200 pull-ups, and one of the most powerful, positive peoples on the planet. He said, you think this is by accident? Mihal, in that first conversation, he turned everything. He said, everything is about perception and mindset. Okay? He said, but you're going to have to do some cleaning, and that's removing all negative people, places, and things around you. He said, because you're a candle, you were given a mission. He said, but with every candle, there's a dark spot that the light at the top of the candle just will never hit. He said, but the bigger the candle, the bigger the dark spot. He said, so on your days where you're having a bad day, they're going to be 2,000 times more powerful. He said it could even cost you your life, because that's where you're at. He said, this is why it's important to have that circle of energy around you, your foundation, your mindsets, your catch and release routines. Like he taught me, when something happens, you catch it, you observe it, you deal with it, and then you release it back. The puffer fish you see, that was by design to change a person's blood pressure in 20 seconds. But these are all techniques that he's taught me to bring my blood pressure down in the middle of the storm because of the cortisol. We talk about acid, but Dave is the first one that will remind you that if you are sick and you have a desire to heal your ailment, or improve your quality of life through the plant-based lifestyle. If you do not adopt a positive mindset, you might as well keep eating meat and dairy. He said, because the cortisol created by your negative mind will kill you faster than any meat, dairy, yeast, and sugar. He said it's the most important thing. He said Steve Jobs was eating the same thing you're eating, D. Like his chef, I trained him. The only difference is he was angry. He created the iPhone, but he's wondering, I got all this money, all this brain power. Why can't I kill the cancer? He said, D, I can't prove that. But the only difference I see in your situations, you're both eating the same thing. You both were thriving, but one of you went positive. It's the only difference. Now, we can't prove any of that, but these are the things he used to shape my mind, and then began telling me to practice these things. He said, the storm, there's no such thing as a perfect day. Okay. There's pockets in the day that will be amazing, but the day that's perfect is the day you're in paradise. The day there's no pain, D, you're kind of dead. Okay. Wrap your arms around it all. You have to, because there are no perfect days. It's doing the best you can with what you got, using gratitude as your attitude to remind you that no matter how bad things are, it beats not being here. And it's those tools, Mihal, that I have to program myself, and I have programmed myself to float around in my head. So if anything happens, I can just reach up there and grab it. Like it's that serious. Because so many people are sick. My phone blows up, emails, Amber gets them, I get them, text messages, call, everybody's sick. And then I'm sick. And then we have our life. And if you don't put yourself in a position where you have programmed yourself to deal with the turbulence and everything else in life, life will program you. And I promise you, you're not going to win. So if I could say anything to everybody listening, find some positive distractions, okay? All distractions aren't bad. Find things that on the drop of a dime, you can revert to, and it'll change your behavior or the way you're thinking for at least 10 seconds. If you can take 10 deep breaths, you can make a conscious decision to not go back to how you were feeling 10 seconds before, because your blood pressure should have went down. And this is what he's taught me, and it hasn't failed me yet. But it's very important.
Wow. Yeah, I got goosebumps, man. This was very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm sure, all the listeners really appreciate it. And yes. You talked about it already, but just kind of to dig a little deeper into that. If someone finds themselves into, a desperate situation, they hit rock bottom, they got diagnosed with something, or they're like in a really, really bad situation, and it's really hard for a person to wrap their head around positivity at that moment. So what are some, can you give us some simple techniques or something to get them started into possibly helping them get away from that extremely negative, desperate mindset?
Absolutely. So I had that same desperate mindset. It wasn't until I kind of passed the doctor's projected death dates that I started getting more confident. But there was a time where I realized they didn't know what they were doing. And that I'm really, I have Dave, but I'm out here on my own as a terminal cancer patient, which is, if you think about that, that's very, very scary and very intimidating. And if you keep thinking about that, it would destroy you. But some of the techniques, the number one, it's not even a technique. It's just the flat out truth. You have to find something to live for that's greater than yourself. I'm just going to flat out say it. My thing was my daughter. Okay. When I was on my knees, my life flashed before my eyes. And it was like, look, D, you don't have the opportunity to quit because you brought somebody into this world. And if you give up now or think about yourself, no matter what they say or how you're feeling, you have to do this for her because history is going to repeat itself. You're going to leave here because it was too hard and you quit and gave up. And then she's going to be without a father, like you were without a mother. You guys are best friends, and she could potentially throw her life away like you did. So what I'm saying is I used my daughter with that first bite of pine nuts that tasted like dirt. I used her when those stitches and staples were in me and I had to walk. I used her every step of the way because she was more important than what I was going through. And on the flip side of that, when you get to where I'm at, you still have bad days. But what I found is helping people, when you're so engulfed in helping people, you don't have time to think about yourself. And it's all about distractions. So if you got newly diagnosed and you want to fight, I need you to go to that mirror and look at yourself and make an agreement and tell yourself, I don't care how hard it gets, I'm going to do what I have to do for whatever reason that you choose. But if you try to do this by yourself, you're going to put your life in the doctor's hands, and the doctor needs you need to work together. That's my thing to patients. Patients oftentimes hand their life over to somebody else and don't do any research. They don't do any self-education. Okay. First thing I want you to do is research what's going on, what's been used, what's been successful, and then figure out why you want to fight and who you're fighting for. Because if you don't, you're going to give up. We're humans. We're not robots. And fighting cancer is the hardest thing anybody has ever done in their life. They don't teach us how to do it in school. It's not in any classes. But it will take you off this planet if you don't navigate through that journey correctly. Like you don't get a second shot. You can't get this one wrong. So again, if I could reiterate anything, it's investigating your diagnosis. See who's been successful with what. What's working, what's not working. What for this benefit gives me 20 more problems. You need to do your work for your survivorship. The other stuff will fall into place, but if you've just got diagnosed, you need to figure out who you're fighting for, okay, and what your care plan is, and make an agreement with yourself that this is what I'm doing. Because the wishy-washy, the hills and valleys, the up and down patient, their survivor rate is not high. I mean, this is my life. This is all my life is dedicated to advocacy and awareness and helping people that are in my situation or don't want to be in my situation. And this is all I have.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And I have no words, really. I mean, it's so inspiring, and it really, you cover so many aspects of a recovery journey, of a healing journey, that I think this is, more than enough information for the listeners, anybody that might be going through a situation like that, or know someone, just to get started. I mean, sometimes I think in life, to overcome difficulties, we just need to plant a seed, I mean, things don't happen overnight. You need to let the information sink. You need to plant those seeds and let things start happening, and take charge of your life. Don't be a victim of your condition or the system. Exactly. And just be a fighter, like you said. I really like how you have your pose with the hands. And what was the saying? What was the saying again?
That represents, and it used to be just for me and just for cancer, but as I've had success in my journey, I've kind of opened it up. It represents I don't care what you're going through. It represents going through any turbulence. The hands in the air mean keeping them up, keeping your head tucked, and never stop swinging until it's over. It's literally the fight of your life. If you got to close your eyes and get in the middle of that ring, keep swinging no matter what. That's what that means, bro. But it's not just for cancer anymore. It's for everything, because everybody's going through something. Everybody's going through, whether they let you know or not. Everybody you know has their own little story.
I love that, man. So keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and don't stop swinging until it's over.
Swing until it's over. Yes, sir. Head
That's
up,
amazing.
chin tucked, and don't stop swinging until it's over. Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
Yes,
dude.
brother.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. And for people that want to follow you or get in touch with you, is how can people find you online? Can you share some of your links and your social media for those interested in getting in touch or following you?
Absolutely. I can be reached at D'Anthony Trains on Instagram, at D'Anthony Trains on Twitter, D'Anthony Evans on Facebook, public figure and personal. And for bookings and starter kits, and that's basically just a plethora of information that's been collected over the last 7 years that I just shoot to people just as a little introduction to the lifestyle. Food choices is in there, forks over knives, some of Pam Popper's stuff, my personal bio, a shopping list, Happy Cow, these different resources that you need in this early stages of the journey, or you will fail. You can't do this by yourself. So you can reach me for that at d'anthonytrains@gmail.com, and it's free of charge. It's just what I got quite a collection of information that I've collected over this journey. And I've been the guinea pig. I've been the case study. So again, everything that's come out of my mouth is not as a doctor or a medical professional, but rather as a patient who has had some extraordinary success that the world has never seen by simply following some different guidelines that's sharing his success. I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm not bashing modern medicine. I'm not doing any of that. But I am telling you that cancer loves fat and it loves old things that are stored in your body. And if you're fighting for your life, the best thing you could do is remove the fuel for the cancer. And the best way to do that is through the transition into a whole food plant-based diet, or lifestyle rather. Scratch that. Sending love, light, peace, and positive energy to everybody listening. Be safe, be peace, be love. And please continue to be amazingly you. Thank you, Mihal.
Thank you so much, D. And we'll leave links to all of the information you gave and your email and your social media on the show notes. Again, thank you so much, D, for coming to the podcast, and we'll catch up soon, I'm sure. I know you're working on some really amazing projects that we can't just share just yet, but we'll bring you back here on the podcast once those ideas are up and running and share with our viewers.
Absolutely. Give my love to your wife and your baby. Tell them I said hello.
Thank you, D. Take care. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.